So I recently did pretty well at the Stuttgart Regional Championships, where I managed to get 10th place. And I've already done a team report on the team that I used to get 10th place, but I was also on stream round 10. So I'm going to be watching back the stream game, sort of talking about my thought process during it, if I think I could have made any improvements, how I think my opponent was playing, and stuff like that. For a little bit of context, this is my 8th time being on stream at a regional, and I had lost all 7 of the ones before. So I was very nervous because I was like, well, I'm cursed on stream. I'm about to lose. And my opponent actually has no results. And that's because this was his first regional. So his first regional, and he's doing really well. He actually ended up finishing top 8. So big congrats to him. Here's the team that I used. I've already done a team report on it, but it's fairly standard rain, except I've never really seen these 6. Usually when you see Incineroar and Basculegion, they're with an Amoonguss version, like Amoonguss Gholdengo, instead of Sinistra and Dragonite. And usually Sinistra and Dragonite are with like an ursaluna version. This is what I used. Already done a team report on it, so if you're interested in this, check out the team report, but after watching this game. Okay, and now this is my opponent's team. It is Amoonguss, Incineroar, Vivillon, Gholdengo, Porygon 2, and Ursaluna. So straight away, I see that my Taunt Goggles Incineroar is huge here. I also see that he only has 1 water resist, being Amoonguss. So I know that my Rain core is pretty strong into him. So straight away, I'm like, I want Incineroar, I want Pelipper, and I want Basculegion. And then I'm wondering, what do I want as the last? Sinistra is very good into the Ursaluna, so that I am considering bringing, but then its Hospitality isn't that good with my Rain core, and it doesn't really do that well into anything that isn't Ursaluna. Archaludon I think is very strong as well. It can sort of hit everything on the team, which is nice, and I can just start electroshotting, but it can't take a ground move from Ursaluna. So if I do get into Trick Room, I would have to be very careful about how I play it. But I do decide to go with Archaludon because I feel like Archaludon is just a safer choice in this matchup. Dragonite, I never really considered it. I don't think it's bad, I just think it is worse in this matchup than either Sinistra or Archaludon. And not being able to hit Gholdengo is a big thing. I was very concerned about my opponent just going for like a Protect the Gholdengo style of game plan. And even though I've got Incineroar and 2 waters, which is very strong into it, I wanted my last Pokemon to also be able to hit it. So Archaludon made a lot of sense. So we see my opponent, he goes for Vivillon and Porygon 2 lead, whereas I go for Incineroar and Pelipper. So straight away, I'm like, okay, he's forcing me to only be able to taunt 1. I can either taunt for Porygon 2 to be able to stop a Trick Room coming out, or taunt for Vivillon to be able to stop a Sleep Powder. And I sort of decide I want to stop the Trick Room more, because I've got Archaludon in the back. The Ursaluna in the back from my opponent could be very annoying. So I want to stop the Trick Room more than I want to stop the Sleep Powder. And then I'm thinking, if I'm just letting him Sleep Powder my Pelipper, maybe it's better to just fake out the Porygon 2 this turn. I fake out Porygon 2, he Sleep Powders my Pelipper, and then I get to burn a sleep turn without him getting anything. And that's sort of my thought process this turn, is that by doing this, I'm stopping Trick Room, but also I am burning a sleep turn. So we do see Fake Out comes out, he goes for the Sleep Powder onto my Pelipper. I will take my first turn of sleep, and then he flinches. So not much has happened this turn, but I've burned a sleep turn, which is really huge into teams like Francesco's, because they rely so much on having free turns, so being able to have a free turn myself is huge. So now I just decide I'm going to taunt the Porygon, and I'm going to Hurricane. I've got a 30% chance of waking up with my Pelipper, and this means I can stop Trick Room. We do see that he goes for the Terra on the Porygon 2, and this does mean he is most likely going for a Terra Blast. I'm expecting to lose my Incineroar this turn, and he goes for the Hurricane, so almost certainly going to be a double up, but my Pelipper does wake up. So there we see that I'm just rewarded because of turn 1, I burnt a sleep turn. Obviously, I did get lucky, but if I went for the taunt straight away, turn 1, I maybe wouldn't have been able to get that first turn wake. I do go for taunt on the Porygon 2, and the Porygon 2 hits me back with a Terra Blast, getting rid of my Incineroar. So I have lost my Incineroar, but I feel pretty good about this position. I know Basculegion can come in, and I can probably just Wave Crash the Vivillon and Hurricane the Porygon 2. And as you see, I just straight away go into Basculegion. I don't even consider Archaludon because I know I need to get rid of this Vivillon so then it can't Sleep Powder me again. Wave Crash into it is just really safe. I could make a read and Wave Crash for Porygon 2, but in this position I feel quite ahead, but I think I can just Wave Crash and Hurricane. The good thing about Hurricaning Vaporeon 2 as well is if he switches into a resist, I do have a 30% chance of just getting the confusion, which is very powerful. He can't Trick Room, and he is now weak to Hurricane because he's a fighting type. So if you're my opponent, you probably need to switch out Vaporeon 2 and protect for Vivillon. We do see he does switch out Vaporeon 2. I think that is his best play. You need to get rid of a taunt to try and get Trick Room up, and he goes into Gholdengo, so he is going into something that resists my Hurricane, and he goes for Protect on Vivillon. I just go for the Wave Crash, as you saw, it goes into the Protect, and then I am getting the Hurricane off. The Hurricane's not going to do that much damage, but it is a Life Orb Gholdengo, so it might not be that bulky, and I don't get a confusion. So here, I feel like I need to get rid of this Vivillon still, and if I actually go for the Terror on my Basculegion, then Shadow Ball shouldn't be able to pick up my Basculegion because I get rid of my ghost typing, so I'm no longer weak to it. So I feel like it's a fairly safe play for me to just Muddy Water and go for the Terra Wave Crash. Terra Wave Crash also means it covers for a switch in. It's probably going to one-shot any switch in that's not a Moongus, but if he's brought a Moongus, then he's really not got that much fire power. I do consider Hurricaning him as well, just for the 100% accurate, but I'm like, Muddy Water will do so much more to this Gholdengo. And we do see the Terra coming out. That's actually my Terra. I don't know why I reacted like that. Terra from the Basculegion coming out, but we see no switches from Francesco. I think it makes a lot of sense for him to not switch. Like, if he switched the Vivillon into anything, it's going to be taking so much damage that it's really not worth it. We see this huge, powerful Wave Crash come out. Rain boosted, Life Orb boosted, Terra boosted for 1 HP. But that was worth it. I actually did more damage to myself because of the Life Orb and the recoil, but it was worth it. And we see the Shadow Ball come out, showing why I terrored, because the Shadow Ball doesn't pick up the knockout. If I hadn't terrored, I would have lost my Basculegion then and probably been put in a fairly awkward position. And I hit the Muddy Water. Muddy Water only 85% accurate, but gets rid of the Gholdengo, which is huge. He is now down to 2 Pokemon, and if one of them's a Porygon 2, which it is because we've seen it, I can just target that down with Wave Crashes and Hurricanes. If he had something like the Amoonguss or the Incineroar, that means that he is not threatening much damage at all, so he needed the Ursaluna in the back. So in this position, I just get rid of the Porygon 2. I just stop the Trick Room going up and I should win the game. Wave Crash Hurricane should do it. Yeah, I don't really know what else I would do here. I think my opponent, you maybe hope for a Choke and Protect, but my opponent actually doesn't protect the Ursaluna. I go for the Wave Crash with the Basculegion, and it actually one-shots the Porygon 2. I did not expect it to one-shot Porygon 2. I knew it was powerful, but I did not expect it to one-shot. Like, Basculegion's damage is insane. That is crazy. And this does mean that I get the Hurricane into the Ursaluna slot. I just realised some of you may be wondering why I Hurricaned instead of Muddy Watered. I didn't want to risk the accuracy, basically. I didn't want to risk the accuracy, so I thought I'd just Hurricane it, and then the Hurricane goes into the Ursaluna. We did actually see my opponent with a Headlong Rush instead of Facade. Now, that is huge because it means my Pelipper's Sash is kept intact. I guess he was maybe going for a switch. He had to go for a choke at that point. I go for Body Press. I'm just doing damage to it now. And I miss for Muddy Water. So if he went for Facade, this could actually be a more awkward endgame. And he just Headlong Rush, one-shots my Archaludon. But as you can see, he is very low HP. So here I identify that I can just wait out the burn to get rid of him, so I don't have to rely on my inaccurate moves that my Pelipper has. So I can just go for a Protect, and then attack next turn. He can worst case bring me to Sash, and then he goes down to the burn. So Pelipper protects, and Ursaluna goes for a Facade into the Protect. He takes the burn damage, and now he's got 1 turn left. I just click for a move. I'm like, maybe I'll hit it, and he doesn't get to hit my Pelipper, but it doesn't really matter because he's going down at the end of his turn anyway, and the battle is cancelled. So the interesting things to think about that game is how lucky I got with the first turn Wake. If I got a second turn Wake, I maybe would have been fine, but if I got max sleep turns, I really don't think I would have been in a very good position at all. My opponent probably would have been able to stall out the taunt, be able to sleep powder another Pokemon. So I think that letting myself get sleep powdered maybe wasn't the best. But I do like how I played that game. When thinking about how I'm going to adjust, I decided that I'm definitely going to go with Pelipper Instant lead again. I feel like that lead is very strong into his entire team, and I want Basculegion in the back. I did consider going Sinistra this time instead of Archaludon, because I felt like if I went Sinistra, I would be more willing to let him set up the Trick Room. and thus wouldn't have to let him sleep powder me, but I decided to go Archaladon. I thought to myself, I'm a game up, I'll bring the same Pokemon, I'll let him adjust, and I want to see how he adjusts, because I don't want to be bringing Sinistcha if he decides to then go a full Gholdengo support mode and doesn't bring Ursaluna, so I just went with the same 4 Pokemon. I felt like that was best at covering anything he could do, whereas the Sinistcha is pretty good at beating the Ursaluna. Now, if I'm my opponent, I actually wonder what his thought process would be. So, we'll see what his thought process is in a second, but I kind of expected him to go something like Incineroar, Vivillon, Gholdengo, and Mungus, and just set up the Gholdengo and just kind of try and beat me with that. But with me having Muddy Water Pelipper, maybe that's not the best because he can't redirect my Pelipper. So it's just a very awkward matchup for my opponent, realistically. And we do see he leads with Incineroar, Vivillon into my Incineroar Pelipper. So straight away, what I notice here is he can knock off my goggles. And I think that that is a very strong play for my opponent. The Incineroar taunt was so huge in that matchup. Even though my Incineroar was only on the field for 2 turns, the taunt was huge. So what I'm kind of expecting here is for him to knock off my Incineroar to get rid of my goggles. So I decide I'm going to taunt his Vivillon anyway. If he protects, then the taunt doesn't go off, but I get a Tailwind up with Pelipper. And if he doesn't protect and sleep powders my Pelipper, I get a taunt off and I can just freely knock off that slot next turn. Like, I felt like a very powerful play for my opponent would be protect the Vivillon and go for the knockoff on my Incineroar. And that works into basically any play I can do, except if I Tailwind with my Pelipper. And we do see that he is going for a Terror. And this is the Terra Ghost on the Incineroar. Now, initially when I saw this, I thought, okay, he doesn't want to risk me going for a Fake Out, even though he's seen he's the faster Fake Out. But it also means that he lives in Muddy Water, so I think that this Terra is just so smart at guaranteeing that he's going to get the knockoff on my Incineroar this turn. And we do see that he goes for the Protect on the Vivillon, but I get the Tailwind up, and I get the Taunt off, but it doesn't go through because he protected. And then his Incineroar goes for the knockoff. So he went for the play that I was talking about where he wants to get rid of my goggles, and I think that's a very smart play. I think if I protect my Pelipper or attack with my Pelipper, then I'm put automatically in a bad position. But because I Tailwinded, I have basically the freest double off of my life. Nothing wants to switch into Hurricane knockoff, and if a Vivillon stays in, which it does, I get rid of it, meaning I don't have to deal with sleep for the rest of the game. And sleep is something that if you can avoid facing it in Pokemon is huge because it's such a great status condition. So I get rid of the Vivillon, and then his Incineroar just goes for Parting Shot into my Incineroar. I'm not sure why you go for it into my Incineroar instead of into my Pelipper. I feel like Pelipper's the one that's threatening damage, my Incineroar's not, but maybe he just wanted to guarantee he'd get the switch out because my Pelipper could have protected that turn. And we see Porygon 2 come in. So seeing that it's Porygon 2, I am kind of expecting Ursaluna to be the last Pokemon. And we see the Incineroar come back in. So straight away, I think to myself, a play that he's probably going for is Fake Out my Incineroar and set up the Trick Room. Because that way he gets to make me flinch, so I don't get taunted, and he gets Trick Room up for the Ursaluna. So I decide I'm going to Terra Ghost with my Incineroar. I think that this is the only time I Terra Ghost with Incineroar the entire tournament, but it is huge. This means he can't stop the Taunt, and I can just get some damage off with Pelipper. Basically, I want to stop him getting Trick Room up, taunt the Porygon 2, and just get as much damage on Porygon 2 so that when I don't have Taunt available anymore, I can just one-shot it. So the Terra Ghost guarantees me this. It does make me weak to Knockoff, which is something I've got to keep in mind, but it also lets me not be hit by Terra Blast. So we see the Terra coming out. Terra Ghost and Incineroar. I think this was easy my best play. It was just a very safe play in my head. Like, even though he could make the read, I liked what I was getting out of this turn either way. And we do see he didn't go for a Fake Out, so I get the Hurricane off. Does an okay amount to the Porygon 2, and I get the Taunt on it, which means he can't Trick Room until he switches out or like 3 turns later. He does go for the knockoff on my Incineroar, doing a good amount of damage, so he basically read that I was going to go for the Terra Ghost, and he goes for an Ice Beam. And if that had frozen, this game could have been very different, but luckily there was no freeze. So here I think to myself, I might as well knock off the Porygon 2. If it's Ursaluna or Gholdengo in the back, I'm getting rid of a valuable item no matter what. And then the Pelipper, I was tempted to Muddy Water, because Either I'm getting a lot of damage on this Porygon Tomb, or I'm getting a lot of damage onto what switches. But I saw that I only had 2 turns of Rain left, and I didn't want Archaladon to be in an end game where I don't have Rain, so I decided to switch it out. I feel like that was a much safer way of playing this, but if I did click Muddy Water and hit it on the Ursaluna, I probably would have just won the game on the spot, but Muddy Water isn't the most accurate, so I was trying to play it around the accuracy. I do get the knockoff on the Ursaluna, get rid of its Flame Orb, so it's a lot less powerful than it could be for the rest of this game, and he goes for the Parting Shot onto my Archaladon, so he gets to bring back in the Porygon 2, and now this situation I think is actually very interesting. Because on the surface of it, it's like, oh, I obviously just taunt the Porygon 2. But on these sorts of teams, because it's Tail and Trick Room team, a lot of the time these Ursalunas have a decent amount of speed. So this Ursaluna, I imagine, is something like 95 speed. And if you saw my team report, you would see I'm 96 on my Incineroar. But if the Ursaluna had outsped my Incineroar, he can just headlong rush me and Trick Room. I also think that going for Trick Room from him is a fairly good play anyway, because I don't think he wins without it either way, so in case he makes the read that I just knock him off, which honestly was tempting, then that works as well. But in my mind, I just need to stop this Trick Room. I taunt it and I body press it. I don't really care about Archaladon for the rest of this game. Oh, actually, I Electroshot it, I guess, because yeah, that'll do more damage than a non-boosted body press. Yeah, Electroshot makes a lot of sense. It's just going to do decent damage, and I can just start doing more and more damage as I start Electroshotting more, and I get the taunt. So we see my Incineroar outspeeding the Ursaluna. Honestly, I fully believe that my Incineroar outsped his Ursaluna by 1 point, and that 1 point in team building won me this game. And he goes for the Headlong Rush, gets rid of my Incineroar, but at this point, I'm fine with Incineroar going down. I got the taunt off, I've got an Electroshot off, he also can't Terra to Terra fighting me, and he goes for the Trick Room. That Trick Room from him, 100% the correct play. We also see Rain run out, so I could get to bring my Pelipper back in, so saving Pelipper was huge. So that Trick Room was 100% the right play, because if the Ursaluna outspeeds me, he gets Trick Room up and he's in a decent position. If I decide to not taunt, which is a very reasonable thing for me to not do, then he gets the Trick Room up. At this point, he needs Trick Room to win, so even though the taunt was obvious, I think the Trick Room was the best play. And here, I think I just Electroshot and I probably Muddy Water, because if I hit my moves, then I just win. And if I miss them, I'm probably still fine anyway. But maybe a better play would have been like Hurricane and Electroshot that P2 to try and just guarantee it. We do see that the Ursaluna switches out into the Incineroar. I guess my opponent just trying to make some sort of play to keep himself in the game. I maybe would have wanted to see it the other way around, because he needs to get rid of a taunt on his Porygon 2. But realistically, I'm never going to let him get Trick Room up for the rest of this game. I go for Electroshot. It's going to be doing a lot of damage into this Porygon 2. Yeah, leaving him on like less than 10%, and I hit Muddy Water, and that has just guaranteed me the game. I know that now that my Basculegion probably just wins in the end game. It at least beats the Ursaluna, so now I'm like, I need to get rid of this Incineroar. He can't realistically fake out my Archaladon, because if he does, it gives me a stamina boost. So I just go for Muddy Water and Electroshot, because if I Muddy Water and hit the Ursaluna, it goes down, my Basculegion beats his Incineroar. If I Electroshot the Incineroar, it goes down, my Basculegion beats the Ursaluna. And like, realistically here, he would need a miss for me to be able to lose. But even in this position, I'm feeling fairly good, because he's not a burnt Ursaluna. If I double miss Muddy Water and he like fake outs my Archaladon and gets rid of my Pelipper, Basculegion comes in and I'm fine. He does go for fake out on Pelipper. I think that is incorrect, because I think at this point you go for me missing. I think that is easily the way that you win this, and that's maybe why I shouldn't have been going for Muddy Water, but I was, because I was like, if I hit, I just win. I get the Electroshot on the Incineroar, get rid of it, and then it's Ursaluna versus World, and I have Basculegion in the back, so I just win this game. So I did have a very, very good matchup this game, but I think I executed it really well. This game 2, I think I did especially well. Game 1, I obviously needed like a good sleep turns, which I did get, and I think I managed being able to get good sleep turns well by wasting the first turn that they put me to sleep. But this game 2, I really like how I played. I think my opponent actually played this set really amazingly, considering the matchup. Like, game 1 came down to sleep turns, which, you know, were just in my favour. But if they weren't, he probably would have won. And game 2, he really was, like, fishing for me making some sort of mistake, which luckily I didn't. But sometimes in those matchups, that's what you've got to do. You've got to go for a mistake. But yeah, Basculegion comes in, wave crashes the Ursaluna, and I get rid of it. And I win my first time on stream, which is also guaranteed to be top cut of the Stuttgart Regional Championships. So I am very happy about this. And yeah, I don't know if there's much more to say. Well played to my opponent. Hope to see him do well in future. Really impressive to get top 8's first ever tournament. So yeah.